I think people are very excited about this game. It's a bit of a mystery because nobody's really sure what this version of Florida is because they haven't really played anybody yet, and we're not entirely sure what this version of Alabama is. So I think it's going to be a fun game and a really good kind of litmus test for where both of these programs are because we saw them play in the SEC championship game last year. It was a very close game, but obviously this Florida offense completely different. This Alabama offense is very different from what we saw last year. So it may not be the shootout that we got in Atlanta. This may be a more defensive game.
Andy, where are you on the quarterback conundrum down there? And the Dan Mullen is playing fairly close to the vest. We all think we know what's going to happen Saturday with specific series, but what do you make out of Richardson?
Well, I think with Anthony Richardson pulling up with the hamstring at the end of that 80-yard touchdown run, it does take a little pressure off Dan Mullen on that decision because you probably want to make sure you're careful with him because you don't want to do anything that's going to potentially risk further injury and not having him the rest of the season. So you may want to be a little judicious with him at first. And so you start Emory Jones, you see what happens, and then you do give you give Anthony Richardson a shot and see what he does. And if he's still averaging 38.3 yards a play every time he's in there, you keep him in there. But my guess is with Alabama's defense, that's probably not going to happen. But if he is that explosive, if he looks like, there are times in those first two games you look at the second coming of Cam Newton, and if that's what he winds up being, and he's doing stuff like that against Alabama, then you scrap the we're going to play him a few series thing, and you just play him because he would give you the best chance to beat Alabama.
Now, that Cam Newton fellow you mentioned, that's the former third-string quarterback under Urban Meyer in Florida.
You have John Brantley ahead of him? That's
fourth string? I can't remember.
That's mean.
By the way, where I vaguely remember. I mean, I know a little bit about Cam Newton, but was he that far down on the depth chart?
No, he was the backup and would have played had something happened to Tim Tebow in 2008. And there's a lot of what might have been had Cam stayed in Gainesville, but I was referring more to Cam at Auburn and especially that some of those long runs that Anthony Richardson broke out. Remember the Cam run against LSU that was kind of his Heisman moment?
Yeah, the Patrick Peterson
moment. That's kind of what that looks like. But now we need to see Anthony Richardson running the offense more, and I think that's probably where Dan Mullen's hesitance is in that he's more comfortable with Emory Jones running the entire menu, but you might have to go to the bar menu with Anthony Richardson because it might send Alabama's defensive coordinator Pete Golding to the bar afterward if Anthony Richardson is as good as he's been. I don't see that happening against Alabama's defense compared to FAU and USF. But the thing is, if you've got a guy who's this explosive, you have to try to use him and see what happens. And if it's working, you just keep doing it.
I would argue that that Cam Newton run is one of the two or three best moments I've ever seen in person. I think it was Patrick Peterson. I think he's still trying to find out where Cam Newton went because he looked like a rookie as opposed to the best player in college, one of the best players in college football that year. I want to talk a little bit more about the broader picture right now, and that's the Southern Cal job. And everyone's speculating. Everyone thinks they know who the next coach is going to be. Just based on the people with whom you speak, what do you think it's shaping up to look like as we get closer toward the end of the season on what they're going to do?
Well, I don't know who the next coach is going to be. I've always said if that job opened that I think from a personality standpoint, James Franklin would be a good fit there. The salesmanship aspect of him, and he's really good at that part of it, I think would play very well in that job because I think you kind of have to be a salesman because in LA, you're competing against the Lakers and the Dodgers and the Rams for everybody's attention. Penn State's not quite like that. And obviously, James Franklin's done a very good job at Penn State. But there's a little bit of the Vanderbilt job that James Franklin had to do at USC where you are selling more. And I remember when he was at Vandy, he made Nashville one of the stars of his recruiting pitch. And I guarantee he could make LA one of the stars of his recruiting pitch. But he's got a really good job. I don't know if he wants to take that. A lot of people say Mario Cristobal from Oregon. I'm not sure that's a better job than what he's got now. He's already got Oregon rolling. So do you go to another school in the league where it may take you 2-3 years to get to where you've already got Oregon? I think even if USC hires a really good coach and Cristobal stays at Oregon, there's still enough good players in California and on the West Coast for Cristobal to keep Oregon well stocked the way they are now, and for USC to be stocked. And then you have a good rivalry there, but Cristobal could still have the best team in the league. So I'm not sure I'd change if I'm him. If I were Mario, I just keep doing what I'm doing, wait until Nick Saban retires, and then try to get that job. And then, Matt Campbell, Luke Fickell, you hear those names. Those guys don't strike me as the type who would like to be at USC, who would want to recruit that way. Honestly, you probably want somebody who's recruited in the SEC, because who are you competing against for the best players in Southern California now? It's Oregon is one, but it's also Alabama, it's Clemson, it's LSU, it's Georgia, and that's your competition. So you probably need people who can handle that level of competition on the recruiting trail. There's one name I'll give you, Paul, and this is totally out of left field. I guarantee you USC is not considering it. I don't even think this human being is considering it, and he may not even want to be in college right now. I always thought Dan Quinn would make an exceptional college head coach, because he's the kind of guy who could recruit really well. He just connects with people very easily. He's been a head coach in the NFL. He's been a defensive coordinator at the college level. He's a Pete Carroll guy, which USC, that seems to matter to them. I don't even think he's even thinking about this right now. But if I were them, I would at least reach out, because I think he would actually be dynamite at that job.
I don't think you realize that in the city that you live, how many hearts started to flutter a minute ago. When you said Dan, I thought you were going to say Dan Mullen.
I don't see that. I mean, maybe he'd like to go to LA, and if I'm Jimmy Sexton, I certainly would at least try to leverage that into another raise for Mr. Mullen. But he's doing pretty well in Gainesville. I don't know that. Do you want to pick up stakes and try again somewhere? Now, granted, the competition's a little less feisty out west, so maybe. But I think he's probably pretty good where he is.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.